One of the most confusing and destructive dynamics you'll ever encounter won't look monstrous at first. It won't have fangs or claws. In fact, it'll likely look like everything you've ever wanted. It's that person who seems to understand you, mirror you, and make you feel seen in a way no one ever has. They feel like the missing piece of your puzzle, the calm in your storm. But this can be a mask. And the great psychoanalyst Carl Jung gave us a lens to understand what might be happening beneath the surface. He saw in his patients and in the world a dangerous pattern when a person's dark side, what he called the shadow, isn't just ignored, but grows to unconsciously dominate their personality. You think you found a soulmate, but you've stumbled upon a carefully constructed illusion. You feel an intense magnetic pull, but what you're feeling isn't the bond of two whole souls, it's the gravitational force of a void. This person doesn't truly see you. They see a role for you to play in their internal drama, a screen for them to project all the parts of themselves they refuse to acknowledge. If you don't understand the subtle mechanics of this psychology, you risk getting consumed. Your energy becomes their fuel. Your identity gets erased to make room for their projections. Jung's profound insights offer a powerful way to see the warning signs. Because when someone is blind to their own darkness, that shadow looks for a place to live. And often, that place is in their relationships with others. Maybe you felt it before. That slow, creeping sense of confusion in a relationship that started out, well, so perfectly. It begins with small things. A comment that feels slightly off. A criticism disguised as a compliment. A sudden, cold withdrawal that leaves you questioning everything you said and did. You find yourself walking on eggshells, constantly trying to get back to that initial, intoxicating feeling. You start censoring your own thoughts and feelings just to keep the peace. You feel drained, anxious, and somehow invisible. Even when they're right there with you, you tell yourself, it's just a rough patch. You rationalize their behavior. They've been through a lot, you say. They don't mean it. You convince yourself that you can help them, that your love and your patience will be the key to their healing. You start to think that being needed is the same as being loved. If you just try a little harder, you can fix the cracks that are starting to show. But this is the fundamental misunderstanding that this dynamic relies on to survive. You aren't seeing a wounded person who just needs your help. You're witnessing a psychological phenomenon that Carl Jung spent his life trying to map. He called it the shadow. The shadow is the part of our psyche that houses everything we repress about ourselves. Our insecurities, our envy, our rage, all the messy, socially unacceptable traits that we push down into the unconscious. Jung taught that everyone has a shadow. It's a natural, necessary part of being human. The danger arises not from having a shadow, but from refusing to see it. When a person denies their shadow, it doesn't just vanish. It grows stronger and denser in the unconscious, waiting for a moment of weakness to erupt. As Jung is often paraphrased, everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. The dynamic we're exploring today is what happens when someone hasn't just denied their shadow, but has become, truly, consumed by it. Their conscious personality, the person you think you know, is like a puppet. The real master, it's the unacknowledged darkness within. Jung called this shadow possession. A person possessed by their shadow, as Jung's ideas suggest, is, quote, always standing in his own light and falling into his own traps, living below his own level. The danger here isn't about intentional evil, no. It's about a profound lack of self-awareness that leaves a trail of psychological destruction. So to protect your own mind and soul, you really have to learn to recognize the 5 key signs of someone lost in this pattern. The first and most telling sign is a mastery of psychological projection. Projection is a defense mechanism we all use, where we unconsciously take our own unwanted traits and pin them on someone else. It's a way of saying it's not me, it's you, to avoid painful self-reflection. We all do it from time to time. You might get intensely irritated by someone's arrogance because it touches on your own repressed ego. But for someone whose shadow is in control, projection isn't an occasional lapse. It's their main way of navigating the world. They live in a psychic hall of mirrors, where everyone they meet is just a reflection of the parts of themselves they can't stand. It starts subtly. They might accuse you of being selfish. On a day they've been incredibly demanding. Or they might call you controlling after they've spent the week manipulating your decisions. They might even fly into a rage about a tiny perceived lie, when their own life, well, it's built on self-deception. These accusations, they're often so bewildering that they throw you into a spiral of confusion and self-doubt. You start wondering, wait, am I really selfish? Am I controlling? And that's the goal. The more you're busy defending yourself, the less you're able to see what's really going on. This person, they're a connoisseur of blame. Nothing is ever their fault. Their work failures? Oh, they're always because of incompetent colleagues. And all their exes were crazy or unstable. They're the perpetual victim, always being wronged by, a cruel world. This victimhood, it's a powerful tool because, well, it makes you feel sorry for them. You lower your defenses, you want to help, and you fail to see that the chaos surrounding them, it isn't just something that happens to them. No, it's something they unconsciously create. Living with this, it's like being cast in a play without ever seeing the script. You're not a person. You're just a character in their unconscious drama. The villain, the savior, the parent, anything but who you actually are. And the longer you stay, the more you start to believe in the role they've assigned you. You start losing sight of where their mind ends and yours begins. To break free, you've got to stop accepting their story as fact. When they throw an accusation at you, you've got to learn to ask yourself, is this really about me? Or is this a confession? Recognizing projection, that's the first step to reclaiming your own reality. The second sign is, paradoxically, a kind of perfection. The individual caught in this pattern often presents a flawless, highly polished mask to the world. Jung called this mask the persona. The persona is the version of ourselves we want society to see. The good partner, the smart employee, the confident leader. It's a necessary tool for getting by in life. But for the shadow-possessed, the persona isn't a tool. No, it's a fortress. It's built to hide the emptiness and chaos within. When you first meet them, you're struck by how perfect they seem. They're incredibly charming, almost unnaturally agreeable, and, well, saintly in their composure. They never seem to have a bad day. They don't show real vulnerability or messy, authentic emotion. It feels like every interaction is rehearsed, and every opinion is carefully curated to be impressive. That's because all of their psychic energy is going into maintaining this facade. Jung often taught that the more perfect and beautiful the persona, the darker the shadow it's trying to hide. Think of it like a pressurized container. The more you force the light of your personality into a small, perfect shape, the persona, the more pressure builds in the darkness, the shadow. This person lives in constant fear of a crack appearing in their mask. Any real human experience, a flash of envy, a moment of deep sadness, or a burst of anger, is a threat to their entire identity and has to be suppressed immediately. Being in a relationship with them is like living in a museum. Everything is beautiful, but you can't touch anything. There's no room for spontaneity or authenticity. They expect you to play your part perfectly and never go off script. If you show a big emotion, admit a flaw, or challenge their worldview, they'll shut down, retreat, or get deeply uncomfortable. Your realness is a terrifying reminder of the humanity they've repressed in themselves. The impact on you is devastating. You start to feel like your own humanity is the problem. Your emotions are too big. Your needs are too demanding, so you start censoring yourself, wearing your own mask just to keep the fragile peace. But that isn't peace. It's psychological suffocation. You're slowly dimming your own light to avoid disturbing the ghosts in their psyche. The third sign is one of the most deceptive, a powerful sense of moral righteousness. This person? They cloak themselves in virtue, using rules, dogma, and a feeling of ethical superiority to judge and control others. And while they might look like a pillar of integrity, well, their moralism is often just a sophisticated form of shadow projection. This is the person who's quick to point out everyone else's flaws. They have a strong opinion on how you should live, what you should believe, and who you ought to be. Their criticism, it's often wrapped in fake concern, with phrases like, "I'm only telling you this for your own good." They set themselves up as the judge of right and wrong, the wise guide correcting your mistakes. But Jungian psychology teaches us to be wary of anyone who protests their own goodness too loudly. As Jung's ideas suggest, when someone tries desperately to be good and perfect, their shadow often develops a will to be the opposite. The moralistic person is trying so hard to be good. They build their identity around their perceived virtue, and anything that contradicts that, their own ambition, greed, lust, or envy, gets ruthlessly shoved into the shadow. Because they can't acknowledge these so-called immoral traits in themselves, they become hypersensitive to them in others. They hunt for weakness and sin in everyone around them. Because every flaw they find in you is a temporary relief from the darkness they feel in themselves. Their judgment isn't about you at all. It's an attempt to cast out and punish their own inner demons by projecting them onto you. This dynamic is incredibly damaging. You start to feel constantly watched, judged, and like you're never good enough. Your natural human impulses are labeled as moral failings. Your mistakes become unforgivable. If you push back against their control, they don't have a discussion. They question your character or your awareness. They aren't trying to help you be a better person. They're demanding obedience to make themselves feel good and righteous. The underlying message is always, "I am good, you are bad. To be loved, you must become more like me." True morality, Jung argued, comes from self-knowledge, and that means honestly facing your own capacity for darkness. The fourth sign is maybe the most jarring. It's the sudden, volcanic eruption of rage that seems to come out of nowhere. One moment, you're talking to the charming, controlled persona. The next, a completely different energy emerges, one that is vicious, hateful, and shockingly cruel. This is the moment the repressed shadow bursts through, overwhelming their conscious self in a terrifying display of raw emotion. These outbursts are a signature of this pattern because they are wildly disproportionate to the trigger. You might make a tiny mistake, like, say, forgetting an item at the grocery store, and suddenly find yourself facing a tirade filled with venomous accusations. The intensity of their reaction just doesn't match the situation. That's because you didn't trigger it. You were just the unlucky person standing there when the pressure in their unconscious became too much to contain. After the explosion, the shift back can be just as dizzying. They might act like nothing happened, snapping back to their pleasant persona, leaving you with emotional whiplash. Or they might offer a weak non-apology, like "I was just stressed out," or, "I didn't mean that." They can't take full responsibility, because to do so would mean acknowledging the raging force that lives inside them, and that would shatter the perfect mask they've worked so hard to build. Living with this is like walking through a psychological minefield. You're in a constant state of low-grade anxiety, never knowing what innocent comment will set off the next explosion. You start to shrink yourself, to become smaller and quieter, to avoid provoking them. You internalize the blame, thinking that if you were just more careful or more perfect, you could prevent these episodes. But you're not responsible for their emotional regulation. Their outbursts aren't a reflection of your worth. They're a symptom of their own inner turmoil. Jung used a powerful idea to describe this. If a feeling of inferiority or weakness is conscious, you have a chance to work on it. But if it's repressed and locked away from your awareness, it never gets corrected and is likely to burst forth unexpectedly. These outbursts are leaks from a psyche at war with itself, giving you a terrifying glimpse into the inner world they refuse to face. The fifth and final sign is a profound inability to engage in genuine self-reflection. The person trapped in this state, they're essentially allergic to looking inward. Their entire psychological structure is designed to avoid self-examination, because one honest look inside would force them to see the shadow they've spent a lifetime denying. And this shows up as a complete lack of accountability. They rationalize their harmful actions, they justify their selfish decisions, and they reframe every conflict so that they always come out as the hero or the victim. They are masters of the non-apology. Things like, "I'm sorry you feel that way," or "I'm sorry my words were misinterpreted." These statements, they put the problem squarely on your feelings or your interpretation, not their behavior. A real apology, though, it requires admitting you did something wrong. And that's an act of self-reflection they just can't perform. If you try to discuss how their behavior affected you, the conversation, well, it'll be masterfully deflected. They'll change the subject, accuse you of being too sensitive, or, bring up something you did wrong years ago. They'll twist your words until you're so confused you completely forget why you even started the conversation. This isn't just normal defensiveness, no, it's a desperate fight to keep the door to their unconscious bolted shut. And this means they're incapable of learning from their mistakes. They're doomed to repeat the same destructive patterns in their relationships and their lives, all while blaming bad luck or other people for their problems. Jung saw this as a real tragedy. He taught that when an inner situation isn't made conscious, it appears on the outside, as fate. The shadow-possessed person sees their life as a series of unfortunate events, never realizing that this fate is actually just the external reflection of their own unexamined inner world. Being in a relationship with someone who can't self-reflect, well, it's soul-crushing. There's just no possibility for real resolution or growth. You can't heal a conflict when one person refuses to even acknowledge their part in it, can you? You're left feeling unheard, invalidated, and maybe even a little crazy. And that's the ultimate danger. They don't just live in an illusion, they try to pull you into it with them. Recognizing these 5 signs is a crucial first step, but it can also be scary. It might mean admitting that someone you care about is caught in a psychologically damaging pattern. But this is where Jung's wisdom becomes a guide for liberation, not just diagnosis. The antidote to being consumed by another's shadow isn't to fight them. It's to start a profound journey of reclaiming yourself. This journey has 3 essential steps. The first step is radical discernment. You have to learn to trust your own feelings above their explanations. Your body often knows the truth before your mind does. That drained feeling after a conversation, that knot of anxiety in your stomach, these are not signs of weakness. They are signals from your own psyche telling you something is off. The other person may be a master of gaslighting. They might tell you you're too sensitive or that you're imagining things. Radical discernment means holding on to your own reality and saying to yourself, I trust what I feel, even if I can't fully explain it yet. The second step is the art of the boundary. For many kind people, setting a boundary feels like an attack. But in this dynamic, a boundary is an act of survival. It's not a wall to punish them. It's a sacred circle to protect your own soul. This goes beyond just saying no. It means creating energetic and emotional distance. When they try to project onto you, you don't argue. Instead, you state your reality calmly and end the conversation. When they have an outburst, you don't try to soothe them. You physically remove yourself. You stop being an available screen for their projections. You make your own well-being non-negotiable. The third and most profound step is to confront your own shadow. Jung believed that whatever irritates us in others can actually lead us to understand ourselves. Often, the reason someone else's darkness can hook us so effectively is because it resonates with something unacknowledged in our own psyche. Maybe their victimhood plays on your need to be a savior, or perhaps their moralism triggers your own hidden shame. Seeing the shadow so clearly in someone else is, truly, an invitation from your own soul to do the work they refuse to do. This is shadow work. It's the process of turning inward and asking with ruthless honesty, what parts of myself have I denied? What negative traits do I possess? And where, precisely, do I project my own insecurities? This isn't about blaming yourself, no. It's about becoming whole. As Jung famously said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This work is the ultimate form of protection. The more you integrate your own shadow, the less Velcro you'll have for other people's projections to stick to. You become a solid, integrated whole. This journey isn't easy, but it is the path to true psychological freedom. If this resonates with you, and you feel like you're starting a new chapter of self-awareness, consider subscribing for more deep dives into psychology and self-knowledge. To anchor this intention, join a community of people on this path by commenting below. I stopped being available. I started being real. This journey into Jung's psychology isn't meant to make you fear or suspect everyone you meet. It's a journey of empowerment. The pattern Jung warned us about isn't a monster to be slain, but a painful lesson in human nature, both theirs and your own. It's the living embodiment of a soul that has become a stranger to itself. By repressing their own darkness, they haven't escaped it. No, they've become its prisoner, doomed to unconsciously inflict their inner conflict on the world. Seeing this pattern clearly gives you a powerful choice. You can let yourself be pulled into their chaos, or you can accept the wisdom of Jung's great insight. And that insight is this: when an inner situation isn't made conscious, it happens outside as fate. You can choose to stop participating in their fate and start consciously creating your own. This takes courage. The courage to set boundaries, to trust your gut, and most of all, to turn your gaze inward and meet the shadowy parts of your own personality. This is the great work of what Jung called individuation. It's the process of taking back our projections from the world, taking responsibility for all of who we are, both the light and the dark, and integrating them into a stronger, more authentic self. The ultimate protection from the shadow of others is the illumination of your own. When you learn to face your own complexities, you become immune to the manipulations of those who can't. You no longer fear the darkness, because you understand it's a part of life and a source of hidden strength. You learn that the goal isn't to be perfect, but to be whole. And in that wholeness, you find a peace that no unintegrated soul can ever take from you. As Jung said, if a person only learns to deal with his own shadow, he has done something real for the world.